sir.
And then Scott Stapp came in and made it perfection. That poor guy, man. I would hate to be him now.
Yeah, well, I just saw something the other day. It was like, you know, Creed is relevant again. And I was like, nope.
No, sorry. They had a good run.
Yeah, well,
it was called 1998.
That's right.
And hey, it happened.
Dude, we got to save some of this for the podcast.
No, I agree. Well,
but, dude,
I can always cut this out and leave it.
I mean,
yeah, we'll talk about all that.
We will.
We'll go.
Yes,
I want to deep dive the 90s.
Oh, we will. We could do a series. We could do a whole podcast.
Well, this can be part one of
about our opinions about
the band's
butt rock
and
yeah, butt rock as a reaction to grunge and it limping on still. I cannot believe. That's what
Yeah, we got to save some of this.
We'll get it.
I'll
leave
leave this in the actual episode, and I'll just cut out the song. So we'll put this in.
Okay.
Teaser for later.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. What the hell? Let's just try and run it.
All right.
We'll see. Close enough for government work. 2, 3, 4. As of now, I bet you got me wrong. So unsure you run from something strong. Tortured brain, show your belly like you want me to. As of now, I bet you got me wrong. So unsure we run from something strong. Something's gotta turn out right. You sugar taste, sweetness doesn't often touch my face. Stay if you please. You may turn out right. That was better than the first take, actually.
That's good.
I hit one damn weird chord.
Hey, I did on the first take because I couldn't remember it. So.
Please don't hear any of this, Brad. And Dad's like, I got the fuck out of there. I was like, oh man, you didn't partake?
Do you fear death?
Oh, one of the greatest lines of all time.
I
Very
could have jumped
underrated.
it. I could have jumped it.
Trumpinator 2020.
Making me 30 sides of red song. Listened to so much. Are you
That needs to, motherfucker.
Alright, man. Good jam. Episode 59. Thanks for coming on, brother.
Yes, sir. Thanks
So,
for having me.
Let's keep the 90s talk going. We were just talking about 90s rock.
Yes.
My favorite thing. So, when was the last time you and I sat down and jammed together?
Oh my gosh, the 90s.
2000?
Yeah, who knows?
Probably.
I mean, yeah, probably the last time we played music together was probably in
the year 2000.
2000. Yep.
'Cause
Right at like around graduation, before, after, somewhere.
Well,
around there.
we played graduation night for sure.
That's right.
We played. You
I meant
played
to ask you. Yes, I meant to ask you if you have a recording of that, because.
So I think my mom does.
Okay.
So the original copy of the tape, according to legend, was loaned to Jared Seipert, who was supposed to be out here
Say no more.
last
Just
week.
kidding.
Jared,
Yeah.
I mean that's twice in a row you've canceled, bro. Just saying. Anyway, Mom nagged me for now 20 years. When are you gonna get that tape back from Jared? He doesn't claim to have the tape. It's gone. I think she found another copy somewhere. So yes, it exists.
Okay. Good to know.
I haven't seen it to confirm it.
Right on.
I'm also kind of afraid to watch it.
Oh, of course, but that's the.
It was an original
That's
song.
the whole point. I mean.
It was an original song that we had, like, I don't know, maybe one practice for.
Yeah.
It's me, you, was it Jared on drums?
Yeah.
it was
Jared
definitely Jared.
was drumming.
Amanda Watkins played keyboard.
Yes, I remember that.
Amanda Stokes now.
Was who's playing bass?
I don't think they would let Steven because he wasn't a senior. I thought, who
I think you're right, and I'm trying to remember who it was.
did Adam Peake do anything?
He might have played bass, actually. He might have been the one playing bass for that.
It might have been Steven. I don't remember. I remember Amanda playing. That was a wild experience. I do kind of want to watch that now.
Yeah.
I'll find that. But yeah, so cause you and I only played in one actual band together. I think we only did one show. So it was you and me and Stephen and Paul.
Yeah,
Right.
we did a
Requiem of a Train.
yes, subject of a train.
Subject of a Train.
And then Requiem.
And then Requiem.
We did a couple shows as Subject of a Train,
Mm-hmm.
which we all thought was the weirdest name ever.
Yeah, and it is.
And but that was, it was so funny. Well, the funniest thing I remember, to back up, I remember doing a couple of shows at Clunk.
Yep.
And you know how, and this is relevant to our personal experience with music and everything. I think, and by extension, broader culture. I think my wife just read something the other day that was like, or somebody did, that was telling me, like, our perception is that the time that any individual was about 15 years old was like the peak. Was
Yeah.
that is like
Culturally.
that's the snapshot in
Yeah.
their mind, and that's the best time, or however we want to oversimplify it. That's kind of this. It's got this nostalgic appeal to
Yes.
it, and so
I'd agree with that 100%.
yes. Nonetheless, as we proceed, everybody, we're going to dig into why that's wrong with regard to 90s music compared to today.
There was some good shit though.
Well, and I'll get into that, but so yeah, I remember playing a couple of shows at Clunk, and what I was going to say about that is one of those things that at the time, we came into like playing. I played one or two shows here and there with miscellaneous my dad's bands, and
Yeah.
I had performed in various capacities by that time. But as far as going out and playing like an actual community venue where a lot of different people play, that was probably my first experience doing that. Yeah. With my own project,
Right,
with
your own project.
something that was
I
like,
guess I didn't realize that.
yeah, because I mean we were like 16 at the time, and
Yeah.
so that was just coming
Just
into that.
driving, probably.
Yes, and so I like didn't I didn't have a reference for all the venues that were around at that time, and when I came into that, started learning about like JRs and all those places, I was like, oh, these places are places that they're staples. They've been here forever.
Yeah.
That was
They
completely not true of Clunk. It was like super short lived, and we happened to be.
We were in a
that,
magical time and place for a venue like that.
Yes,
to where
we were
anybody
in
could
that
get up
like
and play.
very few years.
Yeah, that was a cool thing. Because,
Which, by the way, Chris Selby, if you see this, I mean, props. I mean,
dude, that was a magical thing for kids playing in bands. You had a venue where they would just let you play.
Venues, I like from my personal experience, the venues like create the scene. They create the music scene. They allow the avenue.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I want to get into that later. Ask me if I forget
Okay.
how I'm trying to give back in that way currently. We'll probably get into it, but
We'll weave back into that.
yeah. So, but anyway,
I'll write it down. Just
yeah, there you go.
notes.
So, yeah, we played a couple of shows at least at Clunk, and did a little bit of recording. We recorded we recorded at your place, but we recorded some.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of that dude's name out in Winslow.
Yeah, yes.
We recorded, well, that was the Know This
Yes.
demo that I got endlessly roasted on by Max for.
I was hoping we would pick on that.
Oh, God.
You know.
There it
we go.
is. There it is.
Yes, sir. I still have.
I'll upload that to the Durham channel tonight.
I still have all of my old lyric folders with my original Chicken Scratch
Same.
copies, and I have some of your lyrics like printed. Whatever our like set list we were working up at that time was. I also have a bunch of. So I should say after we did that project, and then after that, that's when myself and Max and Paul started playing.
Yep.
We
Steven and I started.
Yeah,
sober,
yes, and
which was a very amicable breakup. We just kind of decided we want to do our own things.
Yes.
And we were both kind of front guys.
yeah.
But I thought we had a cool sound while it lasted. We had some.
Yeah, it was good.
It was very divergent.
I really enjoyed the role of being lead guitarist, and I missed that. To be honest, I don't know if I've ever said that actually. I missed that about playing in a band with two guitars because
I missed that about you leaving because we didn't use a lead guitar after that. We just stayed a 3-piece.
Yeah, we just same. We
and then I
formed a
missed it
three-piece
for a
and-
long time until Durham. We went back to it, but
Yep.
lead guitar had so much. It's so underrated.
It's just.
And we had
Well,
shit lead guitarists in the 90s, too.
And this, what's that?
We had shit lead guitars in the 90s. Like, those guys that were good, like the Mike McCready's, they were very rare.
Yeah, they
compared
were
to,
few and far between. There was
the
a lot
80s
of
and 70s.
there was a lot of like
Kurt Cobain just played the melody,
yeah, there's a lot of garbage. There's a lot of filler. Like I think some of those. I think Jerry Cantrell and Mike McCready kind of set the precedent for what
Noel
lead guitar
Gallagher had
can
some good
be,
licks.
and just I mean, to me Jerry is like top tier as far as lead guitar like contributing to a band, which is really funny because he did it recording. He's the only guitarist in the band, but he did it on the recordings. Just the thoughtfulness of the parts that he would write. It was not just
think about
over
this.
the top shredding, not just trying to get in the way, not doing too little, just the right thing. Just
I
the right
still
thing
listen to
compliment.
Alice in Chains
Yep.
regularly.
Yep.
Like they're in my playlist.
And that will get me yes.
And that will never change. Like there are certain bands from the '90s that'll always be dear to my heart. The Pearl Jams. It's really that Seattle core was. What are your thoughts on Nirvana?
Okay, this is really good. So I probably 6 months ago joined
Probably
this
the most controversial of the four.
joined this group on Facebook called 90s Grunge and Alternative, which is
Sounds
a
like
very
a rabbit hole.
Yeah, absolutely. It's meant, whoever formed the group obviously is just meant to be, this is a nostalgia page. We're just going to enjoy reminiscing about this music, and that's what it was when I joined it, and then it just escalated, and it got to be everything from just total overposting about the big five grunge bands, which, to clarify,
Well, who's the fifth one?
well, here's the deal. This is again the controversy. I would say STP.
Well, are we going outside of Seattle then?
Well, yes, and
Okay,
this is
STP is a quintessential grunge.
and this is where like
The first two.
the
albums,
people
anyway.
would jump in and just like eat you alive. They're like,
Yeah,
no,
free internet,
grunge is literally just Seattle sound. The da da da. I'm like, yeah. Unfortunately, you can't just own a term like that because people were using the term grunge, like one of the funniest things somebody posted on there was from 1986, this Teddy Ruxpin doll that said like grunge rock or something like that, and it was like really, really funny. So it was like, well, wait a minute, he defined grunge in 1986, and that was like before or as the grunge bands were forming. You know, we're
grunge wasn't a household term until '90, I don't think.
No,
Maybe
and
90.
yes, and you're exactly right, and what's funny, you can look at the contemporary historical the historical use of the term at the time, and then look at what it's evolved into. So I use a parallel, and again, I would get a ton of internet trolls just jumping all over me, including the people, and this includes the people who come up with these terms too. They you come up with something, and then it gets out there, it's going to completely manipulate.
Yeah.
It's going to completely change
That's how it works.
how people perceive.
Yeah.
So in my I use this as a parallel to grunge. In my dissertation, I talk about this. The word gent, and I don't know if you know that whole movement of progressive metal. Started with Meshuggah, and then bands like Animals as Leaders, Periphery is kind of like the biggest, like most popular people, which is Jake Bowen. That's my reference usually if people have no idea what I'm talking about. Jake Bowen is one of the guitarists. It was started by Misha Mansour, and he's kind of one of the pivotal figure of gent. But and it's spelled DJENT, just so everybody knows. I'll tell you what it is. But Jake Bowen is one of the guitarists in Periphery. He's a nephew of John Petrucci.
Right.
And
on.
so,
Okay.
yeah. Anyway, so apparently, I think Frederick Thorndahl, one of the guitarists for Meshuggah, used it to describe, it's onomatopoeia, to describe the sound of chugging, like detuned, palm muted chugging guitar. And he said gent, which is, it's just to describe that term to describe that. So apparently one day Misha Mansour was in a music store talking about pickups, and he's like, "Are these genty? Are they genty enough?" And it was just kind of, he's being silly, and then it just took off as this. Oh, gent is a genre. Gent is no, it's not a genre. It's a sound. No, it's just this style that's confined to this. No, it actually goes beyond that to this, and it just kind of this spiraled out into the same thing, and it is, for all intents and purposes, a genre. And what's funny about that is Periphery just released their 5th album, I think, and it's called "Gent Is Not a Genre." Like just to be funny,
Nice.
like they're just silly. And their previous album is called "Hail Stan," and like just they're silly guys. But anyway, I think I use that as a parallel to grunge because I kind of witnessed that happen as kind of witnessed
our
grunge.
first musical, like,
Yeah.
and it might have been not the last for sure, but probably the last great I mean,
So
taking America by storm, rock music.
yes, and so that takes us into we could talk all. I know we don't have all night, so we're gonna have to skip over some things.
We got time. I'm not in a hurry.
We got time. I don't want to skip over anything, but I do want to kind of give maybe a chronological picture of my perception of all this. So you had grunge, which for me is definitely a Seattle thing. Definitely there's the Seattle sound, but also I probably a year ago or something, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, like older generation, kind of maybe closer to my parents, but not quite as old as my parents.
Like in between us.
Yeah,
50s.
kind of in between. Yeah,
50s.
Yeah, 50s or 60s. And I was chatting with this woman, and she said she actually grew up in Seattle, and her English teacher, English or math, one or the other, was the dad of Ann and Nancy Wilson, and so she said this is when they were like up and coming, and so they would come into class and like play I think they had formed Heart, or maybe it was just their
what was
project.
Heart's connection to Alice in Chains?
So the Seattle, I mean,
well, obviously, but I mean, like how, because one of them sang on
yes, Ann Wilson,
not Jarf,
Sap, yes, yeah. So I assume it's just I'm not sure, but they must have come into each other. I feel like Seattle was definitely not what it is today. I feel like it was a rich,
a different time, dude.
It was probably it was a smaller, very rich musical breeding ground, I feel like, at that time. And so like I don't know if you've seen that special with Jerry Cantrell, just a big long interview with him. It's like 45 minutes or an hour or something.
From when?
Just a couple years ago.
Oh no.
And
what was he talking to?
So good.
I'll listen to
it. It's just him sitting in his like record room, talking about the history of like forming the band, and like and the pivotal part, what I didn't really know was the pivotal role of Eddie Van Halen in that. Like Van Halen was huge in supporting
they opened
them.
For them.
They probably I think
point,
they did.
right?
I think they probably opened for them, toured with them maybe a couple shows, and he was huge in helping them. He like recognized Jerry tells the story. I'll save that for you guys to listen to and you to listen to. But like he tells a story about how they came home from a tour one time, and Jerry opens his garage and it's full of brand new gear and stuff, just gifted to him by Eddie Van Halen. Just like
that's
amazing.
It's all about who you know too.
Yes,
like, not that they weren't already on that track, but if
they
you
were
get
on the
help
track. But man,
from somebody above you.
But that was one that like he caught.
Like how many people have Metallica made superstars like Diamond Head? Who's going back and digging out Diamond Head records? But
right.
Metallica's playing covers of them, and it revitalized their career. They started touring again,
exactly,
just off of a couple songs from Garage Inc. I mean, that's cool. Paying it backward.
Yeah, well, yes.
For the guys that you grew up listening, I used to
Uh-huh.
really hate covers, but the older I get, the more I've started appreciating it.
Yeah, well, and that's here's the moral of the story, kids. Music is a social experience. No matter
It really is.
No matter how you slice it, you can be in your bedroom writing a song by yourself. As a music theorist, I didn't introduce which I don't feel
There's so
like
much
it's
I want to
necessary.
talk to you about.
I have a PhD in music theory, and as a music theorist or former theorist, I don't know. I don't really do much work in music theory anymore, but like I teach it, but I don't really do a lot of research. But anyway, as a person that's kind of dove into that at one point, it is like it's really, really fascinating to think about what
Don't ignore the wild children.
Yes,
outside.
we got. Yeah.
They're fine.
Oh, you're good.
They're burning something down.
Yeah. It's really interesting to think about how this all tracks. How when you like what belongs to you, what you've what's original, what's not. If you're sitting, like I was saying, when you're sitting in your bedroom composing yourself, guess what melodic and harmonic and rhythmic and everything vocabulary you're using?
Yeah.
I mean, unless
Like, I
you're
made up my own because I have no schooling in it.
but you didn't.
No.
Because what you used was things that you've heard. We can't
Sure.
unless you live in a vacuum and just can completely we furthermore, in an American culture, all the music we listen to, most of the music we consume is perfectly tuned and perfectly timed and specifically perfectly tuned to equal temperament.
Yeah.
Not even
Yeah.
yeah, which is one tuning system among hundreds.
Well,
honestly.
a couple things.
And
I want to let you cook, but I want to
Yeah,
throw
go
in a
ahead.
couple things. The thing I remember the most about the grunge was the Sears catalog, which I used to peruse quite a bit. It used to be for the toys, then it became for the ladies. But at some point, they would have, like they were selling boots and like ripped jeans and flannels that were designer.
Yes.
And I'll never forget this interview. I don't know if do you remember the Hype cassette? It was like a documentary on early grunge. I think there was a soundtrack to it that had a lot of the big four on it. It was like a documentary around the rise of grunge that came out in like 90 or 91. Pearl Jam's 10 had already come out. I think it was before Super Unknown, so somewhere in the early 90s. But they were interviewing, name your Seattle grunge rock star, and it might have been Kurt Cobain, but they were like, how did all four bands at the same time come up with this look of flannels and jeans and boots? And whoever it was like, well, we all work at the lumber mill. So you gotta have, and it's cold in Seattle, so we wear flannels and boots. And it was this thing that just broke my mind because you've seen all these guys in spandex and eye makeup for years, right? And not that they weren't talented, but it just became such a bloated show.
Such an image.
And here you see all of society is making clothes that look like these guys. They were influencing the way people dressed, but they were being authentic about it. They weren't trying to dress a certain way to be popular. They were so popular, it influenced everyone else to do what they were doing.
Yes.
It was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen.
Yes. Yeah. Grunge was a very interesting revolution in that way, and
it changed the way society dressed. It was that powerful.
At minimum, the way it dressed, and I think, I do. I think there's with. And I've never, and I said I need to get back into. I haven't done a lot of like theorizing lately, but I need to get back into this. I've thought about writing a paper, doing a study about this for a while, and it's the sound of Seattle and the grunge scene, the early '90s, getting back to this raw form of rock.
Yeah.
I mean, if we want to talk specifics, we're talking. I would say more innovative chord progressions. Substitute a lot of. There's plenty of overdrive, but it's different. It's not this saturated, squeezed sound of the '80s.
It sounded like kids were doing in garages.
Cut the reverb and cut the the high pitched stuff.
Yeah.
And just get back to that garage sound. There's just this raw, authentic thing, which became a lot more accessible. Well, what's interesting about that is I feel like there's a lot of music from the progressive rock, psychedelic rock, just hard rock period of the late 60s, early 70s that it actually was a return to.
Yeah, for sure.
Like a lot more simple, a little bit simpler.
Yeah. Let's get away from this overproduced stuff that's going on and get back to folksy kind of stuff.
And I think that resonated. I mean,
Certainly.
I look at grunge definitely was a style in and of itself, but hey, I still wear, I'm a t-shirt and jeans guy, but I still wear jeans and a flannel shirt. And,
Oh, absolutely.
And who doesn't? It's like comfortable and it's like
well,
you
we
said.
Also live in Arkansas. It's cold.
Yeah.
Like everybody's got flannels.
It's a work
winter.
thing. It's flannels are kind of like flannels and jeans are kind of timeless. They're not really a fad.
No, it's a quintessential American look, but all these guys had long hair.
Yes.
It was almost like, because that's how most men dress in the winter. Flannels, jeans, and boots.
Yeah.
So it was so relatable, but they had the long hair.
They had the long hair, which is
Right?
yes.
That was the edgy thing about it.
Yes.
It was like we're rockers, but also their lyrics shifted into a much more stream of consciousness, acceptable to talk about pain and loss and drug use.
That was a huge
huge
thing.
move forward because the '80s lyrics, bro.
It was just
I mean,
how
it
many
was-
women can I get in bed with? And,
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, it
just
got
like,
ridiculous. It got toxic, but the guys didn't look toxic. You know, they looked. It was a wild time. A lot
Yeah.
of cocaine in the '80s.
Yes.
That you can't help that. But yeah, I thought the '90s was a return back to some real
Yes. Kind of this.
shit before the corporations got
and
nuts
here's
with it.
yes, of course. And
They ruined everything.
let's go.
We'll talk about.
Let's go on to that. I want to make one more point
Mm.
about Seattle. So my and I'll do it through the lens of this conversation I had on this group. And I want to get back to your original question because I haven't even answered it yet. What do I think of Nirvana?
We'll get back. We'll get back.
So the and I'll just tell you as a caveat, the thing that sucked me into this group was this. They did one of those like album tournament bracket things, like this versus this and this, and it was really fun. It
Yeah,
was,
I can see
like
that
I said,
being
the whole
fun.
page was made for fun, for nostalgia's sake,
Yeah.
and had like. Ended up being like what Temple of Dog versus Mad Season. Great little thing to think about as far as like,
Couple of
oh
side
gosh,
projects.
side projects was really cool to think about. That's really tough to choose. The point wasn't to, you know, determine once and for all what the greatest out. That's not the point. It was just that like, you know, hey, what's you guys' opinion about this? You know, let's think about this stuff. But oh gosh, as the masses do, they had to submit their opinions, and man, it just got
Toxic.
so toxic from that.
You gotta get out of that internet stuff.
And
bro.
and that's why I bring up Nirvana. Just again, this is an aside to an aside, but
coming back?
but the thing that it ended up being Nevermind versus Dirt, and Dirt won.
Yeah.
And so, which for me, I'm like, well, I was way more Alice in Chains fan than I was
same.
Nirvana, but oh, there were some people that were just Nirvana was the most important thing. Everybody else just copied them. I'm like, okay, no,
that's not true. But they were the face of grunge for a minute.
absolutely,
And
no,
that
there's no denying
ultimately-
that. There's no denying.
But that had nothing to do with the music. That had to do with the media latching onto Kurt Cobain.
yes,
His face.
and his personality was like,
It was humble and it was shy.
well,
He was
and
not
it was
a good interviewer.
yeah,
or interviewee.
yes, and he had kind of this. It was so relatable because he had the kind of this troubledness about him.
Yes.
He was very like troubled.
Yeah.
And obviously, and kind of like that. There's something going on behind that smile type thing.
Yeah.
But also he could come across as like, I don't care. As you know,
He was very much fuck society.
I'm the most like, you know, confident, easygoing person, you know, there is, like, you
But
know.
also fuck society. Like,
Yeah.
He just didn't care.
Yeah.
You know, he thought everything was broken. It was a very cynical attitude that he had.
Mhm.
But also he had the weight of the biggest movement in like cultural history up to that point in music thrust upon him.
Which is just a
Which is
a
nuts.
weird irony, you know.
Yeah, it
'Cause-
is a weird irony.
just because like he's, you know. But yeah, so one of the conversations there's many conversations spawned on that group about what
I'm sure.
constitutes grunge. This band's grunge. This band's not even close. This, you know, and every which way, you know, and like and then people started deliberately. The group shut down for like a couple months. It's just now started again. People were posting stuff like, I mean, 20 posts a day and just too like oversaturated, too many things, and a lot of the same stuff. So admins shut it down, which I was like, okay, good. I don't want to get burnt out on seeing this stuff. You know, it's supposed to be just a fun thing. Well, one of the conversations kept coming up like this, who is admitted into the grunge canon type thing. So for me, somebody,
that's all subjective.
no, it totally is,
To an
and
extent.
and some people, you know, like I said, some people will just stick to that, you know, biblical definition of, well, were they in Seattle, you know, during the early 90s?
Yeah, but also
And-
think of this. Collective Soul, I would not in any way, shape, or form call grunge. But on their photo shoot for Hints and Allegations, they're all wearing boots and jeans and flannels
Mhm.
because the record label wanted to sell that image.
Yes. Yep.
Because that's what grunge was.
There you go.
So there's
Good.
a lot of bands who kind of get lumped into it who have. I mean,
Who-
you wouldn't consider them grunge?
No,
would you?
no. Not
Like
not at
Weezer
all.
was
like,
not grunge. To
no,
me.
yes, no, not a chance. So, but but my point in like sharing the gent thing and everything was that these genres can take on other things. There's other they can reach outside their immediate scope, and I think it's like good to allow them to do that, allow things to evolve. So for me, this isn't like a definitive hard-nosed definition, like, but one of the things that speaks to grunge is it on the single soundtrack? Because the whole point of that was the whole point of that crappy movie was
terrible movie.
Terrible movie, amazing soundtrack. One of the best soundtracks of any movie.
Seasons on that one?
Yeah, Seasons is on there.
Seasons is like
Birth Ritual, the Soundgarden song.
Yep.
It starts with Breath by Pearl Jam. It has
Wood.
Wood. It has, or maybe it starts with Wood. I can't remember. Anyway, it has State of Love and Trust, which is one of the best Pearl Jam songs.
That's an underrated Pearl Jam.
So good.
You remember when Pearl Jam's B-sides were better than some of the album tracks? Like they would release singles, and Hastings used to carry the singles. They'd have a whole single section.
Yes.
Because the 90s brought back like singles.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't recall. I wasn't really buying music before that, but I think those kind of went away after vinyl with the 8-track and the cassette. You weren't really seeing.
Yeah, maybe so.
Maybe
I don't know. Maybe you did have
I think there were some single cassettes, but it like became something you saw it. Like if Pearl Jam put out a new single, I wanted to grab those B-sides because I knew they weren't going to be put on the record. Mm-hmm. And they had some killer B-sides, especially in the early, like the 10 verses. Years.
Oh gosh.
Just some killer shit.
So good, so good. And I haven't done a deep dive into the discography of all the grunge bands, but I would say if there were two, it would be Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam, because my brother, literally in the next room over, my brother Michael, huge Pearl Jam fan, got everything they did basically, and made his own compilations and everything. Just like
The Soundgarden was always my ultimate favorite. I thought Chris Cornell's writing was just in tune with something different, man.
Yeah.
A Change probably the most influential to me specifically. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I don't play Soundgarden on guitar. Like I don't even mess with the tuning.
No, I've only done that a couple times, and it's like, it's hardly.
Not like, you said you're covering Fell on Black Days. It's like that's kind of what you're limited to.
That one's that
easy,
one, and like blow up the outside world or something. Yep. Yeah. So I was in one of these conversations. We were talking about Smashing Pumpkins, which
grunge.
Here we go. That's what I'm saying.
They're grunge.
That's what I'm saying.
Pumpkins was definitely grunge.
Oh,
Gish.
And here's the deal. Yeah,
Gish was a grunge album.
So here's the deal. I can't remember. I'd have to go back through and find the post. Somebody, posted Alice in Chains or posted Smashing Pumpkins on there and said something of the grunge bands, and in which like somebody comments, how in the world is like Smashing Pumpkins grunge? Like what on what planet are they grunge? And I'm like, okay, let me break this down for you. First of all, they are a rock band from the early '90s, which already Chicago, kind of starts gravitating you toward that if you're like a successful rock band. But then I did my homework a little bit. They toured with Pearl Jam or played a couple shows with them in 1991, which was like that's pretty darn early. It's like that's the stuff.
Now you can go in and out of a genre too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I don't know if you followed Silverchair very far.
Yeah, absolutely. And they show up on that page a lot.
Well, like Frog Stomp is a quintessential grunge album. It came out in '95.
Undeniable.
But I'd say probably their second album was also, but they evolved into something totally different, like a synth pop Beach Boys kind of sound.
Yes. Yeah.
So you can weave in and out.
You can weave in and out. Absolutely. So
Bush, for example.
Yes.
That's grunge.
For sure.
And that was late. it was 94.
Mm-hmm. They get a lot of hate on that page too. Which I'm like, hey, I 16 Stone's a great album.
16 Stone is a great album. There's no denying.
And they definitely tried something different with
Razorblade
Suitcase.
Yeah, and it didn't work. Swallowed was a great single.
Swallowed was a good song. Greedy Fly was good.
See, Greedy Fly is a little too long for me.
Yeah,
but it was different.
I like the hook of it a lot, but there was a lot of kind of just a little bit slow, dry, more
Yeah.
experimental stuff on that
Personal
album. Just
Holloway,
kind of-
Bone
yeah.
Driven, some slower flow. Or no, the float's on their Golden. Did you hear their Golden State album with Head Full of Ghosts and Superman? It's their fourth one. Because
No,
I
I
think
don't
people
think
gave
so.
up on them after Razorblade Suitcase.
I'm one of those people.
Science of
Fairweather
Things-
Bush fan.
Yeah, I know. I've stuck with him. I still stick with him. His solo album that he did, I think it's called Wanderlust, but he did it with Bob Rock. And it came out while he was still married to Gwen Stefani. And the whole, like, if you listen to lyrics, which I'm not even a huge lyric guy, but if you read the lyrics, I remember telling Julia, I was like, he's about to get divorced. Like, these are, like, my relationship is falling apart lyrics.
That's funny.
And, like, I would assume it has to be about the wife. And then shortly after that.
Yeah.
But that's interesting that artists will put their soul in some of them, not always.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's interesting.
Oh, I remember the last question I want to ask you before I let you cook again.
Yep.
You were talking about getting a PhD in music theory.
Mm-hmm.
See, I've always tried to learn the least amount possible because I'm terrified of trying to do the right thing. So
Yeah.
I guess my question, has it made you a better writer?
So the very short answer is yes.
Okay.
And and here's the deal. I've gone back and forth about this sort of thing, and I know exactly where you are.
I'm coming from. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
I understand. Because it's very easy to. So I love music theory, and I'm good at it. But do I want to do it for a career? I remember my daughter. I think it was probably like in church sometime. They were asked to fill out all these things. I think it was for Father's Day sometime. It was like they were asked to fill out stuff. This little picture of a necktie, and it had all these lines like, what does he do for a career or something like.
Yeah.
And she just wrote, does music theory, and I was like, what is that? What is that?
Yeah,
what kind of a freaking career is this? So, I love it, but I don't love it enough to have it consume my soul away from playing and performing and writing and all that stuff. So
I just love the simplicity of being able to go where I want without thinking about,
Well,
is this right? Is this wrong? Is
no, and here's the thing about it being right. I'm teaching a songwriting class right now.
Okay.
And
break this down for me, because I've been asked to teach one of these before. And I was like,
interesting. That might go beyond this. That might go beyond this podcast.
Well,
I
don't
to share
know
some
how.
resources.
Well, my answer was I don't think you can teach that. That was my
Okay,
answer.
so mine is completely.
You can teach the
completely
craft,
the
but
opposite.
not the. Okay, I want to hear what you're doing then.
So I am coming at it kind of as a scholar, kind of as a theorist. What I'm doing with them, and they kind of hate it. It's high schoolers, mostly juniors and seniors, and they kind of hate it because I make them do compositional exercises every week, applying a new concept. And here's the thing: I want to address what you said about being right or wrong, doing the right thing, doing the wrong thing. The way that I teach this class and the way that I approach composition is completely there's no right or wrong answer. One of the first things I tell my students is you need to think about what your purpose is in composing. What are you after? Do you want to be Taylor Swift? Because get in line. There are 10,000.
Get in line. That.
There are 10,000 people just as good or better at songwriting and any combination of songwriting, stage presence, looks, maybe connections, maybe that's probably the weakest link. But there are 10,000 Taylor Swift runners up.
I've told this story before, I think, on the pod, but I legitimately tried to cover a Taylor Swift song for my friend Nicole, who runs a podcast, and I literally couldn't find a thing to do with it. I was like, I just there's nothing here.
Yeah. So,
If you like Taylor Swift, that's cool.
Yeah, no, hey, I'm
No
not hating
shame.
on Taylor Swift.
A little bit of shame,
Yeah.
but
But if you want, point being, if you want to be a commercially successful pop star and have all the whatever, that's very few and far between.
yeah. But think about this also. You're never going to have another Metallica drip. I mean, it's not going to happen.
No, and I want to talk about that. I want that to be kind of our last point, maybe. Or anyway, I want to hit on that point about the state of affairs of music.
It's good and bad.
Because
It's
Yeah.
it's got pros and cons to where we're at now musically.
yeah, so when my approach to teaching songwriting stuff, when I tell them, first off, find your purpose, because it could be that you're just composing. On the other hand, you want to be a pop star or whatever. On the other hand, you could be just writing something that is interesting to you, and
Sure.
that's just going to sit in your bedroom. Which again, going back to my comment earlier about music being a complete social experience, you can't disconnect yourself from the history of music and everything unless you live in a vacuum. I mean, you'll be composing something that's, sounds kind of condescending, but it's more or less a variation of something that you've heard, something that you've consumed before.
Sure.
Because you'll be using the same vocabulary. You'll be using your vocabulary based on your experience, based on your mental assimilation of music that you've consumed.
Right.
And and that's not even to say techniques that you've employed, that you've acquired.
Yeah, sure.
Because composing is a skill, and it's something that takes practice, like anything else.
It's a two-part thing for me. You got to have a spark. You got to have that inspiration. There's a great John Lennon quote where he was talking about songwriting. That might have been that Rolling Stone article he did. But he said somebody could come to me and hire me to write them a song, and I could do it. I know how. I know the craft.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to be very good. So I'm not going to be inspired by anything. But I can write you a song. I can write you that craft.
Mm-hmm.
I think the craft is teachable. That spark, that finding that inspiration. So as somebody who's been writing since I was 13, for almost 30 years writing songs, I go through peaks and valleys.
Yes, and I 100% agree, or I should say I agree with that concept, but I think that is entirely the individual subject. I think that's very true. I can't really, like, in my own mind, in good faith, put something out there that is that's just like mechanically, now I'm using this chord progression, now I'm using this.
Yeah.
I can't generate it from that.
Yeah.
And I talk about this all the time in my music theory classes, about how theory is descriptive. We are looking at music theory as descriptive, not prescriptive. When you read old, like, continuo manuals from the 1600s, they seem very, very prescriptive. They're like, now you take this thing and you do something with it. And there's compositional exercises that Bach and Beethoven and whoever would do, where take a motive and now transpose it up a fifth, and now lengthen the rhythms, and now shorten the rhythms, and now invert it, and now do it in retrograde, and we do all these things to manipulate this music, and that composes out a piece.
Yeah,
but that's kind of this very mechanical, and that's so my point is, and we literally do that stuff in my songwriting class as an exercise to say, this is one way, and that's just with regard to melody, really. Then there's other things we do with meter and harmony and all the. I mean, I have them make a list. This is actually something that doesn't really show up in all my music theory studies. It doesn't really show up that much. Just asking a simple question: name all of the things that makes one song or one piece of music different from another. What are all the parameters of it?
Yeah.
And so we start with that, and they come up with 2 or 3 things, and then I'm like, okay, what else? Keep going.
Yeah.
The melody's different. Okay, yes. The harmony's different. Yes. Those are big ones.
You got to have a kick-ass riff.
The meter's different. The rhythm might be different, which is a separate thing from meter. The timbre that you choose to use. You could play the same tune, same riff on a piano or on a guitar, and it's going to be completely different.
What delivers
the tempo,
the melody the best? Yeah.
The key, the orchestration, the texture, not to mention the lyrics. There are about 12 to 15 of them that come up with, and so I use that as a springboard to say, okay, now let's explore what's possible in all of these, and I'll tell you, most music groups are going to be, most musicians, most artists are going to be utilizing some, but not all, or favoring some over the others, or take and this is a thing that shows up in the group sometimes. Not so much in this group, but this is the word that's a can of worms. Tool, and that just becomes this whole thing. Tool has this fan base. Tool has a fan base, and there's this famous quote that floats around, some comment that somebody made, and somebody snapshotted it, and it's so funny. It's like, to be fair, to understand Tool, you have to have a higher IQ. Blah blah blah. The complex polyrhythms and all this. It's so funny. Like it wasn't even done in jest. It was done serious. And somebody was actually trying to say this, and it was just like, wow, that is the most like pompous thing you could ever say.
It is, but Tool fans are probably pretty intelligent.
Yeah,
the ones I know are super intelligent. Like there is something that the math in those equations speaks to.
So, yeah, but the deal with
do you like Tool? Yeah, they're overrated as fuck.
I'm kind of like,
what is your purpose in writing a song? I have a purpose. I want it to kick ass, and I want you to be able to sing along with it.
Yes, so that's very specific, actually.
And that's a very specific.
That's a very
that
specific.
I have when I'm writing a song.
Yeah,
can you sing along with this? And
yeah,
it's every song.
Yes,
I want at some
point. And that's
point,
really particular.
Right.
Like in contrast, my brother and I write music and it's instrumental, so nobody can sing along to it.
Sure,
but we have a different appeal.
You've always obviously dove more into the scholarly side of it than I have. I've always been very grunge about it.
Yes, but point being that's different purposes.
And part of that's fear.
And I try to.
It really is. Like I've always Paul McCartney had a quote back in like the late '60s. Because somebody had found out that he didn't know how to read and write music, and that shocked a lot of people because you think musicians would generally know that stuff, whereas in they usually don't. Most rock musicians don't know any kind of...
And speaking, while I'm sitting here with you, I got to think about this, and Ashley Richardson, if you see this is no offense meant, but her mom would sub at Farmington a lot, right? I remember you coming into band practice one time telling me that you got into an argument with her because she was like a piano teacher, about she like made the hard-nosed claim that every professional musician like transcribed their work, and you were like yeah Kurt Cobain definitely like wrote note for note all the time. It's really funny.
I don't remember that.
That was really funny. I
was right.
Yes, you're dang straight you were. But anyway, I mentioned Tool because on the one hand, yes, they're using, they do some pretty intricate stuff.
It's impressive.
With rhythm and some different things with rhythm and meter. What they don't do, like basically any variety. I mean, there is literally different songs in different keys, but basically almost every song
sounds exactly the same.
Well, it sounds the same in specifically with regard to the timbre. Most of the timbres they explore timbre to some degree, not to the degree of say like Radiohead or somebody.
Yeah.
But they explore timbre a little bit, but not much. That's not really their thing. You can expect if you go into listening to a Tool song, you can expect that it'll probably be. What will it probably be? It will probably be in drop D. It will probably be based on the pentatonic scale. And it'll probably be just that typical rock quartet texture of vocal, drum, guitar, bass. So those things don't really change. And then you could go further and say, well, yeah, and there's probably not a shreddy solo either. And there's
you don't have to have that, but
and that's what I'm saying. No, like they don't. That's not their thing.
But they also don't feel inspired. To me, when I listen to Tool, I don't feel like it might be. I feel like it's written by committee. I think not Alex Jones. It's Adam Jones.
Adam Jones, yeah.
Alex Jones is not the guitar player for Tool. That's fake news. But I think Adam and what's their drummer's name?
Danny Carey.
Yeah. I think those dudes just get in there and do equations on boards and figure out what they can do. Have you ever seen the whiteboards at Dream Theater practices?
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah,
bro.
it's
and
crazy.
That's too invasive for me. Like, I don't want to have to do all that shit.
I feel that. So, Yeah, so returning, to your question about does having studied music and everything, I'll tell you a couple things. I said yes is the short answer.
Yeah.
Because what was really painful was when and this is getting into my personal life and experience a little bit with it, when we so I did my undergraduate, and so this is what happened since high school, Brad.
Yeah, what did happen? That's been 25 years almost.
So I served a mission for my church for a couple of years, in 2002 to 2004, and then from there, me and Max and Paul got back together and played a little bit of music, and just for a short time. He moved to Dallas, and he's still there. That's
Didn't he come up recently to jam with you though?
Yeah. He came up and played with a band that he had formed with Max after I left for my mission. Okay. They played a reunion show just for fun at Nomads type thing.
Okay.
But no, yeah, that's home for him, and I've kept in contact with him. He's got a family now and everything. So,
good.
Yeah. But anyway, so then I started college, and I was kind of aimless. I started as a business major because I wanted to get a job with a business degree. I didn't know what that meant. I was just like, everybody goes to college, I'm going to college.
Yeah.
Well, I did not do well because academics were never my thing. I barely did well enough in high school to like academically to, I excelled in sports, particularly distance running and like music. Those were my things. I didn't do well academically in school. And so after a lot of, I took a semester off to sell insurance one year. I got married in 2005, and I took a semester off in 2006.
So you've almost been married 20 years.
Yeah, 20 years next year. And we were just talking about that.
Good
run. My daughter just turned 18. So
remind me how many kids you have.
I have 4 kids.
Okay, and they're how old?
Yeah, so Josie's 18. She just turned 18 on Saturday.
That's nuts.
Yeah. Talk about feeling an old adult child.
I'm a little behind the curve because my first kid was born when I was 28. So, but I know people our age who are grandparents already.
Yeah, I know. That's getting crazy. Yeah, and then Simon.
Slow down now.
Yeah, and Simon is 16. He's my oldest son. Mm-hmm. My middle son is Kyle. He's 14. And Simon and Kyle are both taller than me now.
Well, I've met both of them, I think.
I think so,
yeah, those
probably.
Are the ones at the game.
Yeah, and then Taylor's my youngest. He's 13. So.
Yeah, I don't think he came to that.
Yeah, so.
All right, that's a good range.
Yeah. We had them all close together.
Playing zone coverage, and all that.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so anyway, so my wife was pregnant with Josie 2006, and I took this fall semester off of college to sell insurance. Right. And I worked for Walmart at the time. I'm really glad I did because I kept hours. I went to the minimum hours at Walmart, which is like 16 hours a week. And I'm really glad I kept that job because that was like the insurance thing, believe it or not, didn't work out. Turns out selling insurance wasn't my thing. And I went to full time. Josie was born in November of 2006, and then when she was born, it caused me a lot of reflection, and after a lot of thought and a lot of prayer, I decided to go back to school, start back up as a music major. So I started as a music major in 2007, and I was a guitar major. So my bachelor's degree is in classical guitar performance, and my academic, I still had a couple of just like core classes to take. My grades in those classes went up when I started back. I did really, really well in all of my music classes.
It's because you're interested in it.
Yes. I mean, so I got, for the first time ever, I was a 4.0 student, and it brought my core class grades up. So which was really great for me as a teacher now, because I tell my kids, like, they need the arts and they need extracurriculars to give them confidence so they can feel like they can succeed at something. So,
that's absolutely a good lesson. But what is your purpose with all of it? with
Oh,
music
wow.
in general?
That's a deep question.
It is.
I think I just have this. Um, I have it's really hard to answer that. I have a personal and a professional relationship with music, and
It's a weird
and
place
this
to
is
be.
well, and this is where let me get to this.
think
This
I'd
is
like
I'm
that.
kind of headed that way.
Yeah.
This is like those two are difficult to reconcile sometimes. So when I graduated in 2010 with my bachelor's in guitar, and then I stayed at the university from the University of Arkansas. I stayed at the University of Arkansas for a couple more years. Did a master's. Did my master's in music theory because I was very good at my theory classes, like maybe better than guitar even, and I was interested in it. So I did it, and then I applied to PhD programs, but didn't get in to anywhere I applied to. So I took a year off of school in between master's and PhD, and then I got into UNT, University of North Texas in Denton, which is, if you don't know where Denton is, it's like Dallas, Fort Worth,
Yep.
Denton, and moved my family just like cold to Denton
In 2010?
in 2013.
13. Right.
So yeah, I graduated with my master's in 2012. Then fall of 2013 semester, we moved to Denton, and that was a trying time. It was actually really good. When I was telling my wife this the other day, like it was really great for us to kind of like leave home, get away from the comforts of family and familiarity, and just like come together when our kids were young. We were like dirt broke. I mean, I went in without financial aid. I went in and lived on student loans for a few years. I didn't have a job for the first couple of years. I started out as a grader. I would grade undergraduate. That's a big school. So they have huge like theory 1, theory 2 lecture classes because all the music majors have to take those theory classes. So I would grade their papers, and just to give you a snapshot, like there would be these exercises where they're given 4 to 8 measures of a bass line. They have to write tenor, alto, soprano parts, 4-part texture, like kind of keyboard style texture, for all these things, and follow all these rules. They can't no parallel octaves, no parallel fifths, no illegal doublings, all these voice leading rules. And sometimes there would be like 4 of those per homework assignment. And then we would get those, and we would grade for about 40 people each. So I'd be up all night doing that. I mean, because it's not just like, oh, here's your answer, Keith, this is right. No, it's like totally different. There's so many different right answers to those exercises. There's different ways to do it because it's composition. There's just parameters they have to follow. So you have to know the stuff like really, really well to do it. So
it's the science of music.
Yeah, that's really, really what it is, and hardly anybody says that. But that's exactly what I had to say.
It's the science.
It's the science of music, and so I did that, and then it was really amazing. This is getting really personal, but it was a really amazing experience. One night we were looking at our finances, and we were like, we can't stay here. We can't keep doing this because we're out of money. We've like used credit cards. We've gone into too much debt. I literally can't make enough money to do this. We knelt down and prayed together, my wife and I, about this. And what do we do? God, what do we do? Like, I don't know how I'm going to stay here doing this program. And then the next day, I get a call from, I had auditioned for a teaching fellow position, but didn't get it. The next day I get a call from my supervisor, and he's like, hey, so-and-so had to take a leave, long-term leave of absence for medical reasons. If you want this job, it's yours. And I was like, wow. Okay. So took the teaching fellow job, did that for a couple of years. and this is where your family comes in, because we, I was pretty much done with my coursework in 2017. We moved back into our house. We own our house, so we moved back into our house here.
So you kept the house.
We kept the house. We
Okay.
rented it to my wife's parents.
Oh, nice.
During the time, which was really great of them to kind of move in, and everything. It worked out. It
Yeah,
was a great
that's
situation.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So we moved back in, and but I didn't have a job here yet, so I continued to commute. I drove to Dallas every week, basically. And I said, your family comes in because I bought that Camry from your dad,
Yeah.
and we still drive it.
Do you still have that?
It has almost 350,000 miles on it.
Oh, damn. 350.
Yeah.
See, that's a record for me. I've gotten up to 312.
Yeah, it's pretty darn good.
And what you bought that what year?
2017, I think.
And what year is the car?
2004.
It's an 04. It's still
Yeah.
rocking.
We drove it. We went shopping today in it. Yeah. So anyway, let me go back. So that kind of brings us to today. So I got a job. I work for Arkansas Arts Academy in downtown Rogers, and I teach music there. I teach a variety of music classes, and I got that job in 2018, and that and the rest is history. I mean, I've been there for. I'm actually the longest running full-time teacher there.
That's a good spot for you.
It
Seems
is.
like.
It's a very good fit. It's a good fit. And so so now to backtrack and fill in some of the dark details. So one of the toughest times for me as a person that likes to compose, that personally engages with music, was during my PhD in music. Because I like everything was the program was so intense.
As
it
an
was
escape
so
from it.
Yeah, it was so academic
Yeah.
that I couldn't connect. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't, like, I wrote very, very little
Yeah.
during that 4 years. Very
You're in
little.
a valley.
Yeah. Very
couldn't-
much
you
so.
couldn't find
I
that
hardly
Connection
played.
to it. Yeah.
I hardly played my instrument, and I hardly composed at all. I lost a lot of inspiration. And so this is all to address your question. That was a long answer to address your question about, like, you know, does studying music, you know, how does it play into, like, songwriting and things like that. This is all to answer that question. So the short answer is yes, it helps, because I learned a lot of, learned a lot of techniques, the technical stuff, the procedure of composing, but also just, you know, necessarily being exposed to so much different music, including a lot of world music. I did a chapter on my dissertation, talked about a lot of Indian music, North Indian classical.
So do you study that kind of stuff to learn it?
I mean, yeah, and I listen to it some. I mean, casually too. So, and I don't listen to it. I try not to ever listen to music in order to employ it into, you know, I'm going to listen to Messiaen now because I want to use the same techniques that he used. No, I'm like, if it's great music, I'm going to listen to it. If I get something out of it, you know, but anyway, I with a lot of exposure to different music, I can that has, you know, the potential to feed back into my personal music that I compose. But the thing is, finding that moment, that spark of inspiration, became one of the teachers at my school loves to say this quote: "Let inspiration find you working." Like, I rarely was able to ever sit down and just, like, tinker.
Yeah.
Because I was so busy, had a young family.
Tinkering leads to songs.
Yes. I was.
It's the number one greatest thing that leads to a song.
Absolutely.
It's just fucking around.
And
on
I
the
just,
guitar.
yes. And
Just jamming out.
I rarely ever had the opportunity to do that during that program.
I get it.
So it caused this crisis with me. And I vented to a lot of my friends about this.
I get it.
About, oh man, is it that I have studied it so much and now I look at every piece of music as through the lens of, oh, well, that's just using this technique and this, like, you remember my friend Josh Irwin? He,
The name's familiar. I can't
he does
put
film.
a face to it.
He does film. We did our comedy show thing during high school and stuff.
Yeah.
he well, he went to Full Sail in Florida I think for just a year. It's like a film
Okay.
school or
Yeah,
something.
Yeah.
And he said he described it as just so bleak, the way that like his friends would go into watching a movie, they'd just be like, "Oh, that lighting is terrible." Like no connection
Yes.
with the characters, no like
Exactly.
just critiquing the
Yes.
technicalities of it. So I worried a lot during that
Yes.
time if, oh gosh, do I know so much about music now? Have I been exposed to so much
Yes.
music that when I sit down and listen to a piece, oh, that's just, oh, they're just using this, slide progression, or they're just using this,
Yeah.
metrical loop, or they're just using,
But if it's
I can,
cool.
I can explain, technically explain in technical terms
Right.
everything that they're doing, but yeah. But so I worried that, oh, maybe that's why I can't find any inspiration. I'm just now I've exhausted my ability to like I've exhausted my like musical innocence.
Yes.
In that
yes.
way,
That's a good way to put it, because I was telling you about the McCartney interview, and this is right before he learned how to write music and he started composing classical shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then his music started to suck. And I've always used that as like he learned the secrets of the spells instead of just using his magical abilities, right? It's like almost like
Yeah,
how
well,
much is natural ability versus knowing.
So, yes, and but the thing that I'll say, and I say this to my students, is I thought that at the time, but
Yeah.
I do not think that now.
Well, that's interesting, but this
Because-
also brings it back to Nirvana a little bit, because Kurt had no idea what he was doing.
Well,
Most of us don't, but he wrote really great songs with really interesting progressions that hadn't been done before. I don't think he could have sustained it much longer.
Yeah.
I think he probably knew
And the-
that too.
and the interesting thing about Kurt Cobain is that I think he had more an idea of what he was doing than sometimes we like to think, because he came from a background of playing covers, and this is
Sure.
including like some Jimi Hendrix and stuff, and Jimmy was the other character I was going to say.
Yeah.
Going back to about the singles soundtrack, it's a bunch of Seattle's musicians, but Ann and Nancy Wilson are on there covering Battle of Evermore by Led Zeppelin.
Yep, that's right. That
Um,
cover's on there.
Yeah. Well, so is what's the song called? May This Be Love, I think, is the Jimi Hendrix song. Like waterfall.
Yeah.
I'm like, of course Jimmy's on there because it's Seattle music, and I have a personal connection about that, sort of. I at 3 degrees to Jimi Hendrix or something.
Yeah.
I'll just, while I'm talking about it, on my mission, we had this hierarchy of leadership, and the missionaries in the mission were like, there's districts, which were like 8 missionaries or so, like 4 companionships or something. Then there's zones, which are encompass greater, and then there's assistants to the president, which kind of oversee all the zone leaders. And one of the assistants was visiting us one time, and he was from Seattle, and he said his mom went to school with Jimi Hendrix, and the way he described it, what I remember is, they'd be like out roller skating or something, the kids in the neighborhood, and he would be the kid off to the side playing guitar. And I'm like, well, yeah, it totally makes sense. If you listen to his music and you look a little bit into his history, you can tell people are all like, oh, Jimi Hendrix music was just purely fueled by drugs and all this stuff. I'm like, no. You're talking about setting guitars on fire and stuff, but if you listen to like Axis Bold as Love, just listen to that album, the little intricacies and stuff that he does. He's a guitarist. I mean, he was fascinated by this instrument. And you
He
can
took
hear
it to a new level. He leveled it up.
Yeah.
It never went back. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's
Yep.
like you can have stepping stones over the years. Like Zakk Wylde was a big push. When he came on with Ozzy, that was kind of a different thing. And he had this Southern rock thing he was bringing into No More Tears. It's a famous story about the producer of that. Ozzy was bitching about all this Southern rock shit he's doing. And the guy was like, let him do it because it's working. And to me, No More Tears is up on par with like Blizzard of Oz. I mean, I don't know. You've got what are the other guitar players that leveled up? Do you think? I mean, Jimmy Page is in that conversation without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
George Harrison in his time was doing.
Yeah, yeah, in his time. Yeah, sure.
Because you got to think that's early 60s.
And that was yes, in early '60s. Yeah. Yeah. So Yeah. Wow. That's a whole other thread too.
Right?
Golly, there's so many, and I mean, so our school. I have to tell you this, and you guys, this is a shameless promotion for my school, Arkansas
Do it.
Academy.
That's why you're here.
So I was mentioned in an article that Gibson wrote a few months ago. So,
Really?
Yes. The Gibson
The
guitar.
Gibson.
Yes. Because one of my students. So our school is the home of the Sister Rosetta Tharpe Scholarship. So if you don't know who Sister Rosetta Tharpe is, she was from Arkansas. She's from Cotton Plant, Arkansas, which is like in eastern Arkansas.
That's an unfortunate name
Well, here's the deal.
for a town.
But not really, because that's just what it's called.
No, I get it.
And my parents will tell you they pick cotton,
Yeah, no.
and they're as white as snow.
Exactly.
There's you get the real picture of the South, what it's actually like, but yeah, she was from it's in eastern Arkansas. It's not too far from like Memphis, which that Delta area is very like much the blues. So 40s, 50s, 60s, Rosetta Tharpe was this big soulful gospel singer woman. She played an SG. She played a triple pickup SG.
Nice.
And played lead guitar stuff. And she was good. I mean, pretty darn good for that era.
Yeah.
And I mean, Gibson will go, or I don't know if Gibson in general, but they, some of their promotional stuff will go so far as to say like she actually founded rock and roll and stuff. And I'm like, I mean, if the problem with that is if she's just now being kind of discovered, then you can't say that she founded rock and roll. Was she doing it before a lot of the big figures? Yeah, maybe. Like,
right.
But was she a huge influence? I don't know. And if you want to say that's the unfortunate history of the way that blacks and women were treated, then maybe, but bar none, she was an amazing guitarist and like a really important historical figure, I would say. I gave a paper in Australia a few years ago. Oh golly, it's been like 8 years ago.
What's up with you Sallings world traveling, man?
Yeah, we're all about
you guys
traveling.
are all over the place.
So that's the only time that I've traveled internationally, and it was awesome. I mean,
where was it Mike lived for a long time?
They lived in Beijing for a couple of years, and then they lived in Saudi.
Yeah, that's right. Because he was his son was on Walter's team last year. I guess his son didn't play this year.
I don't know.
What other team? So I guess not.
Okay. Well, anyway, it was at a conference about the guitars, like international guitar culture, from 1870 to 1945, guitar around the world. So that was appealing to me personally, but I was coming at it not so much as a guitarist, but a music theorist, because I was in the middle of my theory program. So I took a paper I had written for a seminar and turned it into a conference paper. I basically came up with a really good title and a decent proposal, like a couple of days before the deadline, and then I was admitted, and it was awesome because I basically got a trip to Australia for like, I paid probably a couple $100 out of pocket because I got a couple travel grants and things like that, and it was amazing. And the conference was amazing. It was just so good, so much great information. Well, anyway, the one of the papers was about female lead guitarists before rock and roll. So, and there were like 3 of them that she mentioned. I can't even remember who the other ones were, but Rosetta Tharpe, and that was my introduction to her. That was in 2016, and so I'm sitting there in Melbourne, Australia, and I raised my hand and during the Q&A, and I was like, "Where did you say she's from?" And the lady's like, "Cotton Plant," and she goes, "Are you from Arkansas?" And I was like, "Yeah," and everybody's like, you hear these like mumbling like, "What? Is there somebody still lives in Arkansas?" Like, they've discovered airplanes there, like. Yeah, it was really funny. Like, how in the world did you get to Melbourne, Australia? Yeah. I was like, my parents
even have an airport.
Yeah, I was like, my parents grew up like right in that area. So,
what's funny is about the area we live in Arkansas is one of the, capitals of industry.
Oh yeah, I know.
Talking about who all's up here.
Don't say it too loud.
I don't want
I don't want I don't want the influx of from a certain other big state southwest of us to continue. I feel like that's definitely another topic. But anyway, so our school, I was contacted through one of my students, and then by a representative from Gibson, to talk about having our school be the home of that scholarship. So
That's awesome.
so Gibson has the scholarship. They have several,
Yeah.
philanthropic things, several scholarships and different things, but like the Sister Rosetta Tharpe Scholarship lives at Arkansas Arts Academy. It's
That's
not
very
given
cool.
away anywhere else. It's given to one of my graduating seniors every year. So, and I'm in charge. I mean, I'm in charge of like selecting and vetting who receives a scholarship. And
Very cool.
yeah, it's super cool. So my student, this time this was the second year that one of our students has received it, and so my student that received it this year, they did Gibson did a write up and everything, and they quoted me about it and everything. It's pretty cool. I was like, okay, this is a milestone in my career.
That's neat, man.
Yeah, so that's one of my, in answer to your question about what, me and music professionally, my goal is to continue things like that, to make relevant connections to the rest of the world,
Getting people out there.
yeah.
That's good too. Yeah.
Yep. So, but personally, it's a really soul searching question, because like I said, my during that dark time where my dark ages, during my doctoral program, where I didn't really write much, it was really tough. I really had to consider like what my relationship with music was, and even now, Max is completely different from me in that he'll get off work. So Max works with me, my brother, and he'll get off work and he'll crank up his music, and I can't. I get off
Really?
work and I don't want to hear anything.
Yeah.
And it takes me, I love the teacher schedule, like all the holidays off, all the breaks and all the stuff. It's great. But it takes me, during one of those breaks, it takes me a few days to get back in. And I always return to it.
Yeah.
I always come back to this. But it takes me a few days before I'm like, to decompress and do other
Really?
things to get back where I want to like,
It's a blessing
play
and
and
a
write
curse,
and
man.
everything.
You're doing what you love, but at the same time, you're doing what you love.
yes. Yes. And I just don't recommend it. I think the net is, I don't recommend doing at this level. I could see, again, if you were not even a Taylor Swift, if I was like a touring classical guitarist, if I was doing that, I could see that being, touring is an exhausting venture, no matter what how you slice it.
Yeah.
But
High
but,
respect
like,
to those people.
yeah, but
Couldn't do it.
yeah, but I think that might be a little more gratifying, a little more fulfilling.
Well, let me
And-
ask you this. What's your favorite moment of the musical process?
Ooh. Now, when you say the musical process,
Any part of it. Like, for mine, for example, is there's really two parts. It's when I get that spark and I get that idea. And sometimes it's just jamming, like you said, you're just tinkering, I think is the word used. And you stumble on something and you go, man, that's cool. I like that. And let's work a song around it. It's that spark. And then the second part of it is when you hear it with the band for the first time. That time when it becomes 3D,
okay.
right? Because you're just seeing it in two dimensions. You're kind of seeing that thing, and then what is everybody else bringing to it without my involvement? What are they going to come up with? And then you hear this song a little bit more in a more fresh arrangement. You finally hear those drums come in. You hear that bass line. What's Johnny doing on guitar? Is that working out? Yeah, that's tight. It takes it to the next level. Those are the moments that I really live for. Now, once I achieve that, I don't care about that song anymore. Like, I didn't want to record it. I'm like, we got it. You need to record it.
Sure.
But like, those are when I'm like at my froth, like when that initial spark, and then when you hear it the first time. Like, what is it for you musically that gives you that? Like, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I love it.
Okay. Interesting. So, and you're saying not even just confined to like composition, but like
Anything.
anything
Anything
in the
related
entire
to it, yeah.
Well, I think it's, again, you ask really tough questions.
I'm trying to be the new Joe Rogan.
I was just about to say Joe Rogan light. Yeah, I mean, my immediate response is I don't know that I could confine it to one thing. I would say the different avenues, the different aspects of musicianship have different appeals. So, for instance,
that's fair, yeah.
for instance, like as a teacher, there's the obvious one is when I see a kid nervously standing next to the stage about to go on, and that look in their face that's just like, particularly a kid that has like put in the time,
Yeah.
is nervous because that even almost not.
So that's
almost,
a different aspect
almost,
than I ever get to see, really. Yeah.
It's almost more. That is almost more rewarding, invigorating, enthralling, captivating than them playing the song. Of course, them playing the song, getting up on stage, succeeding is an amazing moment.
Yeah.
But that nervousness before they get on stage, that look on their face, that I have created this forum and this opportunity for them to feel deeply, like by putting on.
That's a good perspective.
Not only by putting on the show, but by all of the work that we've done. They take my class and I say, okay, this is, and I'll tell you right now, this is the way I've structured my classes. I'm like in charge of the music department at Arts Academy, and so we have guitar classes and percussion classes and piano classes and bass classes and things like that. And the way that what I call the modern music program, and the way that I've structured it is, they come in year one, like they don't know anything. They come in year one and they learn at a very comfortable pace. We just, like, guitar one is just like exploratory. We go at a fairly slow pace. We give them a lot of information and don't expect them to absorb all of it. We expect them to absorb some of it. We expect them to take a lot of the downtime and free time that we necessarily build into the class and just start playing.
Yeah.
Like, it is the most pleasing thing to walk into class and somebody has their, I should qualify this, and somebody has their phone up looking at tablature.
Yeah.
Not having their phone up looking at TikTok. When they have their computer or their phone and they're looking at tabs and they're trying to.
How many of these kids have natural talent? What percentage?
That's impossible. That's an impossible question to answer. There's so many things that go into the natural talent thing.
I get it.
But
well, it's always that balance of knowledge versus creativity
versus and work.
Tool is obviously to one side of the spectrum. Nirvana is the opposite side. Marry those up.
Yeah.
Because like Pantera was great at like just those odd beats. Coming in.
The groove.
Like not necessarily odd time signature, but that
yes,
groove.
But the groove, yes. Exactly.
And you got two brothers doing it. And as somebody who plays music with their brother, there's a different connection. I played Durham Fest 2 last, was it this year? This spring. So me, my dad, and my son Walter all played a song together.
Oh, nice.
3 generations on stage. And that was so cool.
I love the family affair.
It is a different experience. It's a different thing.
I love
playing with family.
Playing with my family, and I love listening for that. That's an intangible to listen to in music, but it's there when you listen to like siblings in a band.
Mm-hmm.
You listen to that. There's a chemistry there, and there's
especially when they harmonize. There's something about families harmonizing where they have that. It's like when I do studio harmonies, I do it myself, so I have that same resonance.
Yes, exactly.
I don't want Johnny singing them because it just doesn't sound right on the record. He does them live, obviously, but my voice is going to sync better with myself. Sounds but if you have a sibling, like the Black Crowes are a great example. Mm-hmm. You hear the Black Crowes harmonies? I mean, those guys really get in tight on some of that gospel stuff they do. I don't know the terminology. I'm not the educated.
That's good enough,
music man.
But, I will qualify.
You know what I'm saying.
When people throw fits about calling a Bach piece a song, I'm like, shut up. Listen, here's the deal. 2 things about that. One, I'm glad that people are still listening to Bach at all. Two, don't get pretentious about it. Two, when we analyze music, we talk about individual voices. That's
Yeah,
what we describe.
yeah.
That's the universal term for, a 3-voice fugue or something.
Yeah.
We're talking about voices. Well, instruments don't have a voice. They have a sounding body that's a whatever,
Yeah.
mechanical thing. A voice is a human thing. So,
Yeah.
so if we're gonna describe those as voices, it's as though they're singing, and that's a song. So, that's my soapbox about that. But
I want to get into some Farmington history in a little bit. I'm gonna take a pee break real quick.
okay.